On today's episode of Club 904, we have friend of the program, Duval22.com creator, founder, Gus Logue, going to hop into Club 904 with us, going to break down not only the Jaguars' 48-20 win over the New York Jets, but also look ahead to the massive Week 16 showdown with the Denver Broncos at Mile High this upcoming Sunday. A couple different topics that I've asked Gus to specifically dive into. Yes, we're going to get to Trevor Lawrence and the growth of Liam Cohen's offense, most certainly, right off the top. But then from there, I want to talk a little bit about the Jaguars secondary, the rotation that we've been seeing at defensive back. Is it sustainable? That three safety look with Dewey Wingard now out of the concussion protocol. And yes, folks, we're going to do it. We're going to talk the Civil War. That is not Trevor Lawrence versus the masses, but who should be the Jaguars starting left tackle? It's going to be a fun one. Let's get after it here on Club 904. Welcome in, friends. Just one episode of Club 904 this week. So whether you're watching on Tuesday or Thursday, we hope you are kicking off your holiday season on the right note. Mia O'Brien, as I am with you each and every Tuesday and Thursday, plus Sunday post-game with Brent Martineau, Action Sports Jack Sports Director. If you are watching this, there's a good chance you're watching it right now on actionnewsjacks.com or the .2 stream. If you are watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to our friends at the Action Sports Jacks YouTube channel, as well as their X, Instagram, Twitch, so many different ways you can interact with them. Brent and company will be on site at Mile High in Denver, Colorado, so you know you're going to want to keep it locked in with the boys and Olivia. Shout out Olivia, who is posting this podcast for me since we are taping it ahead of time on actionnewsjacks.com. All right, without further ado, I like to say that we're welcoming someone into the club, but I think the best way to describe today's episode is that we're not getting in the classroom because no one wants to think about school right now. We're getting in the lab. Welcome once again to Club 904, former coworker of mine, always a friend of the show, Gus Logue, Duval22.com creator. Gus, I've given you quite a laundry list of things we're going to cover on today's program, but I know you're ready to dive into all of it. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fantastic, Mia. Thanks so much for having me on the show. I told you beforehand, before we started clicking record, I feel very vindicated right now, as do a lot of other people, especially in Duval County, I guess across the country too, but there's not really a lot of national supporters, or at least there wasn't anymore for Trevor Lawrence, but he just had easily the best game of his career, at least in terms of the numbers. I'm sure we'll dive into those, and really the best stretch of his career, even dating back to Clemson, as Travis Etienne said after yesterday's game. It's the most confident he's ever seen Lawrence. It's certainly the most confident I've ever seen Lawrence. And so it feels like the Jags are going to the AFC or to the Super Bowl, honestly. And they haven't gotten to the AFC Championship yet, and they haven't played the game yet. But just I feel like the vibes around the city so far today are very high. So happy to be here for sure.
I am pumped to dive into it, as if I wasn't excited already to have you on the show. But man, you're throwing the word Super Bowl around, and your name's not Jalen Ramsey. I mean, come on, you got to defend that tape right off the bat, homie.
Actually, I'll say the first person to say it, the first person that I heard say it was Josh Hines-Allen after last week's game, the home win against Indianapolis, which was the most monumental win of the season until Sunday's game against the Jets. They just keep stacking these wins that are big time. But Josh Hines-Allen said at his locker room after that win against the Colts that they're just going to continue stacking these games until the Super Bowl. I forget exactly what the quote was, but he said the two words Super Bowl, one right after the other. And I feel like that's the first time I've heard those two words spoken by a public figure, someone like really well regarded in the building, or just anyone inside of the building. First time I've heard that in years. And so it's definitely on the minds of people inside of the Miller Electric Center, inside of Jacksonville's building. And it's on my mind as well, because 5 straight wins, 25 plus points in 7 straight games, a 6-1 record since the bye week. Again, Trevor's playing like, if he was playing this well the whole season, he would certainly be right up there with Matthew Stafford as a front runner for MVP. And so, yeah, I mean, I would be surprised if anyone wasn't thinking about the Super Bowl. It's definitely premature, but it's okay.
It's funny because I've also said now on the last 2 episodes of Club 904, after I spoke with Travis Etienne last Wednesday, and I brought up to him, is this playoff push similar to the 22 playoff push? Can you draw anything from it? And he said, we're not talking about playoff push. I just want to beat the Jets. And that kind of says it all, though. And I asked Liam Cohen Monday about it as well. This idea of it's about us. That has been the Jaguars' mantra since Liam Cohen became the head coach in January, and it remains their mantra. It doesn't matter who they are facing on the other side of the ball. Roll the ball out, play it wherever. They're going to find a way to, at the very least, put their best foot forward towards a victory, let alone, to your point, 6-1 since the bye week. The most recent of those victories, Sunday at Everbank Stadium. Final score, Jaguars 48, the lowly New York Jets 20. Although, as I've seen more than one person point out on the timeline, Gus, the Denver Broncos didn't thump the New York Jets in the fashion the Jaguars did. The Carolina Panthers, everyone's darling, maybe not so much this week after the loss to the Saints. They didn't thump the Jets in the same fashion that the Jaguars did by 4 scores. And so tell me this, what was most impressive to you? I know we're going to segue to Trevor, but besides Trevor, or maybe more specific, what was most impressive about this victory for the Big Cats?
Yeah, the thing that stands out, not just from Sunday, but from really the stretch of games since their bye week, but especially their 5 straight wins since week 11, is just the fact that this is a 4-quarter team. And that's definitely a football cliche, and it gets thrown around to teams that don't necessarily deserve it. But that's the best way I can describe the Jaguars right now in 5 words or less, is just they compete for all 4 quarters. And we've heard Liam Cohen say, especially in kind of like locker room post-game victory speeches and like messages specifically in and to the locker room, that they want to start hot and finish hot. And you've heard that being reflected by team leaders. I heard Foye Oluokun say the same thing that Liam Cohen has said to his team. And we saw it on Sunday. Like, the Jaguars were 13.5-point favorites against the Jets, which is the most favorited they've been in a game in terms of betting totals or betting wagers since December of 2007 against the Raiders.
But I was a freshman in high school. What were you, Gus? I'm afraid to ask. What, 5th grade, 4th grade?
I don't know, whatever grade an 8th grader or an 8-year-old is in.
Okay, so that's like 3rd grade. So there we go. So since 2007, they haven't been that heavily favored since then. But I had a lot of confidence in the Jaguars covering the spread and winning by 14 and more points against the Jets, because they are what they showed they are yesterday and for the past 4 or 5 weeks. They're a 4-quarter team. They don't let their foot off the gas pedal. They don't even think about hitting the brakes. It's not that like they're running up the score at all. Like, in my view from the press box, I'm sitting closer to opposing media than I am home media. And there was a lot of Jets media kind of grumbling, like, how are they still passing the ball? Like, how is Trevor Lawrence still in? But it's not that the Jaguars are running up the score. I don't think they're being like disrespectful. Like, I don't think this is just like the new Steve Spurrier of the South or anything like that. But I think that they're just very committed to showing what they've got. Like, one of the other messages that Liam Cohen has been spreading to his team is that they just haven't been getting a lot of respect from the National Football League, and that is probably never going to come. And so the way that they're playing is like demanding respect, but then, as Cohen says, like, the respect is never going to come. And so they're able to just channel this energy and play like this week after week, even against not great opponents like the Jets and the Colts without Daniel Jones, etc. And even if they let their foot off the gas, Gus, as I was reminded by more than one veteran in the locker room post-game Sunday, that coaching staff would be holding them accountable. They will not let them take that foot off the gas. That, I was told, is the biggest difference, not just between the Doug Peterson administration and Liam Cohen's, but go right on down the line to the Tom Coughlin, Doug Marrone experiment. I won't even mention Urban Meyer, but even other players who have played for other head coaches. They said that the level of accountability is just something else in Jacksonville comparatively to other locales in the National Football League. We do want to, though, focus in a little bit on Trevor Lawrence. Of course, at this point in time, we've probably exhausted the stat. 5 passing touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown, 50-plus rushing yards, the first player in NFL history to do that. And so let me throw a couple more at you. In the last 3 games, since Trevor Lawrence's last interception, he has thrown 10 touchdowns, 0 picks, 895 yards. If you want to go all the way back to the bye, almost 1,800 yards through the air. Of course, the Jaguars are 6-1 during that time. And now we actually dive inside the nitty gritty, Gus. And so you've posted a couple of these. Ben Solak of ESPN has posted a couple as well, as we take a look at them on screen for those of you watching on video. And I'm curious, I'll read this one from Ben first. And then I know you've also posted some stats as far as the actual drives themselves, down, distance. Trevor Lawrence pushing the ball downfield, averaged over 10 yards per completion against the Jets. As Ben points out, this was just through the 3 first drives of this ball game. At that point in time, he had 0 passing attempts behind the line of scrimmage. More on that later. 0 to 9 yards through the air, 2 of 3 for 22 yards. Here's the biggie. 10 to 19 yards, that intermediate range, Gus. 6 of 6 for 86 yards and 2 touchdowns. At that point in time, he had yet to throw a pass more than 20 yards downfield. As Ben points out, no screens, no shots, just shredding in the drop back game. So much rhythm right now. Not trying to go for the home run ball, but also not trying to maybe lean into the screen game that defined Liam Cohen and his offense perhaps at times in Tampa. What did you make even beyond those first 3 drives? Because obviously with 5 passing touchdowns, there's a lot to get to on the day for Trevor. But what did you make in particular of those intermediate throws, especially the completions, 4 of them, or 4 or 5, to our friend Jacoby Myers, which, by the way, thank you for changing our lives. I know you're just Jacoby. I know you're just Jacoby Myers. 5 catches for 71 yards, 4 of them in the first half.
Yeah, the biggest thing that stands out is kind of like you mentioned it, is just how aggressive Lawrence is being downfield while posting these amazing numbers. It was a career best game for him on Sunday in terms of passer rating, in terms of passing touchdowns, total touchdowns, expected points added per dropback. And so across the board, he was dynamic. But it's not like it was like a schemed up performance where like he was getting just a ton of easy production via like play action shots or like guys like racking up yards after the catch. Obviously, one of Travis Etienne's touchdowns was kind of like just a short pass to the flat, or a swing pass to the flat that Etienne just did the rest. But since Jacksonville lost in Houston and collapsed against Houston in Week 10, Cohen told Lawrence to cut it loose and let it rip. And since then, Lawrence has had passing like averages in terms of depth of target of 8.8, 9.0, 10.0, 11.2, and 10.8. And so again, he's still being aggressive downfield without losing any efficiency. If anything, obviously he's been more efficient with these downfield targets. And as Liam Cohen said after the game on Sunday, like, this is a passing offense. Like they're happy to pass the ball right now because it's working so well. And so again, like Lawrence has just been dynamite, especially in the intermediate, as you said too. He actually finished the game with a perfect 158.3 passer rating on intermediate throws. Off the top of my head, he was 8 for 11.
I have it in front of me. So he started 6 of 6. This is for 10 to 19 air yards, correct?
Yes.
He was 9 of 12 for 144 yards and 3 scores.
Yeah, that's a perfect passer rating. And he actually arguably should have had a 4th touchdown because there was the one in the end zone to Brian Thomas Jr., which it like just went off his fingertips. I think you can kind of divvy up the blame there. It could have been a better pass, but Brian Thomas also could have dove for it and maybe put it, not that he didn't put in an effort, but could have had a little bit more of an extension to go for it. But it could have been a 4th touchdown. It could have been an even better stat line on those intermediate passes. And that's like always what we've seen from Trevor Lawrence. Like the efficiency and the production hasn't always been there, but he's always been most comfortable targeting the intermediate levels of the field. And those also happen to be like, that's the most difficult area of the field to throw at because it's usually the one congested with the most defenders. And if a receiver drops a ball and it's tipped up, or even if a receiver doesn't run a route at like the correct break and correct distance, then it can like make the timing and everything about the play be off. And so that's what's led to so many Trevor Lawrence interceptions and Trevor Lawrence turnovers over the years. And that's why it's been like the discourse of Trevor Lawrence of like, oh, he'd be great if he just cut down on the turnovers is like particularly frustrating because most of the turnovers like aren't even his fault. He's just thrown to like places his receiver should be, and the guy just wasn't there until Jacoby Myers came to town. And now when he's targeting the intermediate levels of the field, there's a guy there to haul in the catches. And so obviously like Myers has been just a skeleton key for this offense, slotting into the like pretty much infamous slot role in Liam Cohen's scheme. Going back to the Rams with Cooper Kupp, the Bucks with Chris Godwin, even his time at Kentucky with Wan'Dale Robinson, like the guys who line up in the middle. always feast in Cohen's offense. And so they tried it with Brian Thomas. He wasn't comfortable going over the middle. I think they didn't want to put too much on Travis Hunter's plate because he was a rookie and playing on the other side of the ball as well. And so now they've got the perfect fit for that role in Jakobi Meyers. Obviously, it allows Brian Thomas to be more of a vertical presence. And like just anytime you see press coverage against Brian Thomas, you can expect that the ball is probably going to go his way. And so the offense is firing on all cylinders. Like it took 10 to 12 weeks for us to get here. It took a lot of trust, I think, is like the biggest turnaround. That's what Cohen said himself, is that like Lawrence is trusting the guys around him, both his receivers and his offensive line, as well as the plays. But I think it's like that, but then also like Lawrence and Cohen kind of learning to trust each other, because like they weren't butting heads in like an alarming way. It was just like in a normal way at the beginning of the season, the way you'd expect any new quarterback and offensive play caller / coordinator pairing to go. But it wasn't a smooth start. But now like all the bumps have kind of evened out. And again, it's just pedal to the metal right now.
I want to hang a little bit longer on the Liam Cohen play design. I will note, though, before I do so, Gus, that Liam told us this Monday, and Trevor reiterated it, or I guess brought it up on Sunday as well. They are seeing a lot more single high safety than they did the first few weeks of the season. Allow for those who may not be familiar, why would that be? And what opportunities has that created for Brian Thomas Jr. downfield, now being more of that vertical X receiver with, okay, I'm just going to say it, the benching of De'Ami Brown and moving Brian Thomas Jr. to that position?
Yeah, the NFL kind of like went through a pass happy transition in like the late 2010s, early 2000s, early 2020s. And a large part of that reason is because defenses were still playing a lot of single high safety structures instead of two high safety structures. In opposing offenses like Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay's offenses especially were able to like beat those single high safety coverages with throwing downfield, but especially on downfield crossers where it's really tough to just like keep up with a guy running over the middle of the field, honestly. And obviously Liam Cohen is from the Sean McVay tree. And so we've seen a ton of crossers, a lot of dig routes, just a lot of in-breaking routes against these single high safety coverages from the Jaguars recently. And so Brian Thomas, like obviously if you're just kind of running like crossing routes, vertical goes, just like kind of straight line routes, that's perfect for him because he can just like separate from guys. Even going into the week 15 game against the Jets, Brian Thomas led the NFL in yards per target against man coverage. And so I know that he hasn't like turned into this all pro that we all expected him to after his fantastic rookie season, but he can beat guys mano as well as any receiver in the league still. And so it's kind of a perfect setup for him. And then like Jakobi Meyers again, like especially on the digs over the middle of the field, tight congested windows where there's a lot of defenders in the area. Like we did see one incompletion where like Meyers kind of like stopped short of a ball because there's a defender right there. But like that's just kind of what happens on throws like that. You're going to get some of those in each game. But generally speaking, that's been like not just the intermediate of the field, but the middle intermediate of the field has been just superb for the Jaguars over the past month plus.
Now, building off of that, 4 of the Jaguars' touchdowns on Sunday came out of the backfield. The most, of course, can't come courtesy of one Travis Etienne, and that was the most by a single player since 2016, according to Next Gen Stats. Walk me through this notion again. When Liam Cohen first came from Tampa, there were 2 things that we talked about on a previous iteration of this podcast. We talked about the 21 pony personnel, 2 running backs on the football field at the same time. And we talked about the screen game and I almost said Kyrie Irving. Wow. Apologies, Bucky. Bucky Irving's place in that screen game in Tampa Town, Gus. Why have we seen kind of an evolution, a slow burn to the point where we're seeing more 21 personnel, the pony personnel for the Jaguars, but also the screen game, as Ben Solak alluded to? It was something we saw especially in the early weeks of this offense. Now we're starting to see it again, and yet Trevor Lawrence is averaging 10 plus yards per completion downfield.
Yeah, I give Liam Cohen and his staff a lot of credit for kind of abandoning the screen game, because especially because I feel like I've seen a lot of credit go to James Gladstone in the front office for like not really sticking with prior investments when they aren't working. Like, for example, De'Ami Brown was expected to play a pretty big role in the offense, but then when he wasn't meeting expectations, the Jaguars like found other players to turn to rather than just continuing to go with him just for the sake of the investment that they made. And so for Liam Cohen, like so much of the Bucs offense last year was predicated on screens. They led the NFL in yards, receptions, expected points added, yards per play, pretty much any metric you can think of on screens last year did the 2024 Buccaneers. This year, the Jaguars ranked bottom 3 in pretty much any efficiency metric you could think of before their week 8 bye on screens. And so instead of just continuing to hammer their heads against the wall, Liam Cohen adjusted by calling a lot fewer screens. And the reason that you saw a lot of success to running back targets yesterday against the Jets is because there was a lot of downfield targets. ETN did have the one touchdown that he kept caught in the backfield, literally, and then just took 45 yards. But he also had an angle route out of the backfield on a touchdown. He had a wheel route on a touchdown. Bashal Tutin also had a wheel route on a touchdown. And so, like, the pony personnel frees up these running backs down the field. And it goes kind of hand in hand with what we talked about Lawrence continuing to be downfield and aggressive in general. Because when there's 2 running backs on the field and they're both very talented and very quick, then defenses are kind of subconsciously, automatically going to start creeping up closer to the line of scrimmage because they assume it's going to be some kind of quick play to get the ball into those guys' hands quickly. But as you saw with like the touchdowns to ETN and Tutin on Sunday, those were downfield pass attempts for the most part and really took advantage of just New York's linebackers, especially Quincy Williams. My favorite number of the week is 158.3 because that was Trevor's passer rating on intermediate throws, but it was also his passer rating when targeting Travis Etienne. It was also his passer rating when targeting Bashal Tutin, and it was also his passer rating when targeting Jets linebacker Quincy Williams in coverage. And so, like, basically
Jaguars
all those
third round pick in 2019, folks, for those youngins out there. Dave wasn't wrong. Yes. He was just early, but not on reminder. Sunday. Gosh.
So, yeah. And Quincy Williams apparently is usually very good with media, and he kind of gave them the stiff arm after this game and said, I have nothing positive to say about this game, so I'm not talking. So, yeah, Cohen really went after him. I think really basically all 4 of the touchdowns actually to running backs in this game were kind of the result of Liam just dialing it up with those pony personnel. Not all of them came in pony, aka 2 running back personnel, but a couple of them did. The 1 to 2 and certainly did. And so, yeah, it was just Liam Cohen having a field day and Trevor Lawrence having a field day at the same time. And so, like, right now, I tweeted this during the game. I don't know how many like coach/quarterback combos are hotter in the NFL right now. Like Drake May and Josh McDaniels, Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay. I think Trevor Lawrence and Liam Cohen are right there at third.
What a time. What a time to be alive. I was reflecting upon it walking on UNF's campus today, Gus. I was like, man, remember that early January? I believe it actually was January 6th, LOL, Zoom press conference with Shad Khan and Trent Baalke less than a year ago. Man, oh man, how things have changed. And speaking how things have changed, again, we're recording this on Monday, but we do have a little bit of breaking news as we're recording this podcast. Mike Garafolo of the NFL Network reporting that Bashal Tutin, the rookie running back, will undergo surgery to repair a finger injury that he suffered in the victory over the Jets. He will miss a few weeks, should be back for the playoffs, which says to me that he will not be a candidate for the reserve injured list. Obviously, Gus, this is going to open up opportunities for LaQuint Allen, the 3rd running back for the Jaguars, that other rookie, the 7th rounder out of Syracuse. I'm curious your reaction to this. Also knowing that Cody Schrader was signed by the Houston Texans, released by the Texans. I don't want to speculate. And by the time y'all listen to this podcast, the decision will probably have already been made. My assessment, though, is that they probably just sign him right back. Right? That would make sense since he was in the organization since late August.
Yeah, we see that a lot. I think, I mean, it kind of just depends on like how the rest of the roster shakes out. Like if, like, let's say like Eric Armstead misses the game, then they'll call up a defensive tackle instead to kind of like fill that void, etc. And so it depends on the rest of the roster, but it certainly wouldn't surprise me if Schrader gets caught up and plays a decent amount of special team snaps. And obviously LaQuint Allen will be bumped up to the number 2 role. Man, that's a bummer for Tutin because I feel like he's like the only Jaguars player that like hasn't had a huge play. He had a really nice touchdown back in week 2 against the Bengals, but it was like maybe a 10-yard touchdown, and he made one guy miss, and then that just walked into the end zone from there. Tutin does have a very high success rate, which is a good metric to look at for running backs because like there's some guys like Detroit's David Montgomery has a lot of short yardage runs and goal line runs, so his yards per carry is probably pretty low, but his success rate is probably pretty high because he's a good back. And so Tootin has a low yards per carry actually, and it's because basically he just hasn't ripped off a long one, because his success rate is actually very high among NFL running backs. He's like just consistently picking up 4, 5, 6 yards when the team needs it. And so I was looking forward to like a big Tootin game, because like Tim Patrick had a huge game, like Jacoby Myers has been going off, Brian Thomas just had a nice game, like everybody's eating for the Jaguars right now. I feel like except for Tootin, and so hopefully he'll be able to have a successful surgery and be able to come back strong for the playoffs.
Exactly. Maybe that game is in the postseason. How about that, Gus? You're talking Super Bowl, so maybe it's out in Santa Clara.
Exactly.
Tootin is finally unleashed in Liam Cohen's offense as a rookie. 44.3 fantasy points for the quarterback, Trevor Lawrence, on Sunday. That, Gus, is the most by any quarterback this year, the second most in the last decade. Josh Allen's 51.8 at the Rams last year being the highest. And so in summation, Trevor Lawrence goes nuclear on the Jets. Now just a matter of can he make it 4 weeks in a row in which we are asking, was that just Trevor Lawrence's best game of his career? So excited to see what is around the bend up at Mile High. And speaking of, excited to see what Anthony Campanelli's defense is going to look like going up against Sean Payton, Bo Nix, and friends. We're going to discuss the Jaguars secondary coming up when we return here on Club 904 on the Action Sports Jax 24/7 channel.
People helping people. It's at the core of what Alive Credit Union is all about, and it's been that way for over 70 years. From the start in 1954 to today, the mission remains to inspire financial wellness and give you a financially fit lifestyle. Alive Credit Union and its employees are committed to not only serving their valued members, but also our community here in Northeast Florida. I had a chance to see that commitment firsthand as Alive partnered with our Action Sports Jax 24/7 team to bring you Armada men's and women's soccer broadcasts. Inside the 18, it is a shot, and it's a goal! Chloe Chivers! And that connection to the community continues with Alive Credit Union's support of the Police Athletic League of Jacksonville. Alive Credit Union's commitment to our community also involves serving the financial needs of all first responders through the recent merger partnership with City and Police Federal Credit Union. Join the community and become a member of Alive Credit Union today. Find out the many ways you can be inspired in financial wellness at alivecu.coop.
Most of us know how to throw. But you need to know what to throw. I'm not talking about footballs, baseballs, softballs. We're talking about those items you need to recycle. Republic Services explains it easy. Recycling simplified. 1. Know what to throw. When in doubt, throw it out. 2. Empty, clean, and dry those materials. It takes an extra minute, but it makes a big difference. And 3. Don't bag it. This makes the recycling process faster and more efficient. This is a look at the Republic Services North Florida Recycling Center. You can make this process even more efficient. By utilizing those 3 steps, Republic Services can help you become a better recycler in your home. Learn more at recyclingsimplified.com.
If you look good, you feel good. And the medical professionals here at Ponte Vedra Vein and Aesthetics are here to make you feel your best. I'm on camera every week, and I have a confession to make. I'm not always confident in my appearance. Can you see my dark circles? Is my makeup highlighting my fine lines instead of covering them up? I question it all. So when I found out about the wide variety of procedures here at Ponte Vedra Vein and Aesthetics, I knew help was just one appointment away. Medical Director Dr. Megan Deacon Casey and her board-certified physicians have been using the latest and cutting-edge technology for the last 10 years, giving men and women their personal confidence boost. From Botox, fillers, Morpheus 8, and so much more. The hardest part was figuring out what I needed. Thankfully, the medical team walked me through what would work best for me through a free consultation. Come look and feel your best with the team here at Ponte Vedra Vein and Aesthetics. Visit them at one of their 2 locations, either over in Ponte Vedra or on the south side.
Welcome back into Club 904. A reminder to like, subscribe to our friends at Action Sports Jax's 24/7 channel, where you are watching this podcast most likely, or on any of their social channels as well. You also can sign up at the Mobrien NFL Notebook for my weekly notebooks, reports, sound from the locker room that you can only get exclusively as a friend of the pod or standard scooper. Packages start at $5 per month. And you know you're also going to want to check out Duval22.com if you're not already already a subscriber. Gus, let the folks know what's cooking there. Our guest today, Gus Logue, the founder and writer and lead everything over at Duval22.com. Minus graphics. We'll give Noah Thomas his flowers on that one.
That's true. Shout out Noah Thomas for the logo. I like that though. I'm going to steal that. The just everything for Duval22.
Everything.
That's right. And that's kind of what we cover over at Duval22. Definitely a lot of Trevor Lawrence analysis, but really just team and player analysis over at Duval22.com. There's a paywalled articles going up multiple times a week over there, but you can also check out a roster page. Also check us out on social media on all platforms. Been doing a lot of short form videos for YouTube as well. So yeah, just podcast platforms, anywhere you can get content, I'm probably there, Duval22.
And of course, to your point about lots of Trevor Lawrence content, when we were texting yesterday, getting ready for this show, I said to you, I want to talk about X, Y, and Z. And then it was like, oh, maybe we'll talk about Trevor. Well, we spent the first 25 minutes plus of this program discussing the offense for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now we will actually get to the questions that I had for Gus Logue, the assignments that I gave him heading into this episode of Club 904 today. The first of which, the Jaguars secondary. Big picture, let's look at the defense, Gus. This is a defense that in terms of running yards allowed per game is number one in the National Football League at an 89.8, I believe it is, yards per game clip. They are the number 10 total defense, according to Pro Football Focus, and the number 10 run defense. But again, in terms of actual yards allowed per game, they are number one. They are 7th in tackling, according to PFF, 21st in pass rush, 9th in coverage. We have heard Anthony Campanelle. We have heard Liam Cohen over the last few weeks. Note that you see the pass rush and the coverage on the back end working in sync together. That is why the Jaguars defense is having success. I am curious if the rotation of personnel we've seen from Campanelle is perhaps another reason why they've had success here during this 5-game win streak, 6-1 over their last 7 games.
I do think coaching certainly has a lot to do with it. Again, you said the unit is 9th in coverage grade. Like, I don't think anyone would have expected them to be a top 10 unit if you said that Tyson Campbell, Travis Hunter would both not be with the team for the majority of the season, but then also that Andrew Wingard would be nicked up. Caleb Ransaw wouldn't be available at all this season. Eric Murray was also on injured reserve for a short stint. And so this secondary has been down bodies, but they've held up regardless. And so there's been guys like Monteric Brown, who's had a lot of fans both inside and outside the building for a few years now. So it's been really cool to see him excel in what's now a full-time role. Greg Newsome has been up and down, but has certainly delivered some big moments for the Jaguars since he was acquired from the Browns. But I think Antonio Johnson deserves a lot of credit for sure, because he was, I think, a little bit pigeonholed as a box safety, someone who plays really well close to the line of scrimmage when he was coming out of A&M. But I think more so he's just a really good downhill safety, someone who Cohen even said this during the offseason, when Antonio Johnson kind of knows what's in front of him and knows what's going on, then he's exceptional. And that's true. And so as the season has gone on, and Antonio Johnson and the rest of the defense, especially in the back end, has gotten more used to this first year scheme. And the Jaguars run one of the most complex defenses in terms of coverages and disguise and sending blitzes from different angles and at different times compared to any defense in the league. There was one blitz, I posted this on X already, where it was late in the game. It was the final interception, Antonio Johnson's interception. And it was a 2-high safety look. And one of the safeties, I believe it was Lane, came down on a blitz at the snap. So he was blitzing from at least 10 yards away. But because it was a delayed blitz, there was just a free rushing lane for him. And so Brady Cook, the Jets quarterback, saw Lane closing in on him with no one to block and said, okay, well, the area that Lane just left is probably not occupied right now. And I have an outbreaking vertical route over there. So let me just chuck it up, because if Lane's coming from there, it's probably going to be open. But Antonio Johnson did a great job of kind of shifting over to that side. The Jaguars ran an inverted cover 2 coverage where Jordan Lewis dropped from the nickel position all the way back to be one of the deep 2 safeties. And Antonio Johnson basically moved to be the defense's right safety to the defense's left safety. And he filled that void left by Lane, and he did a great job of basically breaking on the route before the receiver even broke the route, because Johnson he saw a route going into the flat. And so he kind of just had a good sense of like where the route was probably going to go. And he also had a great understanding of the distance and the area that he needed to cover up because of the blitz. And so just that one play is a great example of like how amazing the coaching staff has been at like not just like calling these plays with like disguised coverages and rotating players and stuff like that to confuse the offense, but also how good of a job they've done to coach up these young players through the season to make sure they really know what they're looking at and can react in an instant and just kind of like play free without thinking too hard. And so definitely shout out to Antonio Johnson. You mentioned 3 safety sets.
Yes.
And I'm glad you looked that up, because then I went to I think it's Sumer Sports actually is how you pronounce it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I looked it up. The Jaguars in the past month have run it on 11% of their defensive plays, which ranks that's fairly high, but it's only 13th in the NFL. And so like,
well, the reason my eyes bugged out, Gus, is because as you alluded to, that's with Eric Murray on IR for 5 weeks. You lose Dewey Wingard, the first game that Eric Murray is really back in the fold. I guess he was back the Titans week. Either way, point being concussion protocol for Dewey. So then you didn't have him. Rayon Lane, a 6th round special teams maven, is what you drafted him to be, and yet he has proven he can be that center fielder, which allows Antonio Johnson to get downhill, even though I don't think he's awful in center field either, and maybe he was typecasted coming out of Texas A&M. And so the fact that they've still been able to employ that many 3 safety looks without having to deploy Jordan Lewis or Jarian Jones at a safety spot, which both of them, in addition to Christian Braswell, have told me that they have been cross-trained at those positions. And so it's interesting that they've been able to maximize that group of 4 at the safety spot, even with some pieces in and out of the lineup.
Absolutely. And especially for Ryan Lane, as you said, like the 6th round rookie who's expected to be like, hopefully he would be a special teams ace. And if he like delivered anything on defense, that would be kind of a cherry on top. But that's exactly what he's been doing. Like these stats are like the rise in 3 safety looks has been because of a rise in defensive snaps from Lane. And so over the past month, he's been playing on defense a lot more. Again, the Jaguars rank 13th in that span in volume of 3 safety sets, but they do rank first in efficiency. They have allowed negative 0.7 EPA per play and just a 17.8% success rate. Both are easily the best figures in the league in terms of efficiency allowed. And so, yeah, it is definitely like they've run 34 plays and 30 of them have been on pass plays. And so it's definitely the kind of thing that like Campanile can throw in as a curveball when the Jaguars are playing with a lead, when they know that they're facing obvious pass situations. But so far it's been wonderful to witness. And so like, it'll be interesting to see, like, because this has been a month. And so like they've been cooking with this for a month, but now is kind of the time where it's like, okay, now opposing offenses have tape on this and they can counter it. So like, what is Anthony Campanile's counter to the counter going to be will be something to watch going forward.
And I just think it's interesting, Gus, because I go back to 22 when Dewey Wingard found that role of special teams ace and 3rd safety himself. It was more of a box safety, downhill, run support, stopping Derrick Henry at the line of scrimmage type of role. And now you look at what 3 safety formations have and can become in the National Football League. Because to your point, 30 of those 34 plays are passing downs, and there's a role for each of those 3 safeties in coverage, not just in support at the line of scrimmage.
Exactly. Yeah, I would guess that 3 safety coverages are so effective just because quarterbacks like don't know what to expect from them. The first thing that quarterbacks always look at when they walk up to the line of scrimmage is safeties. And then they look at cornerbacks because like going in that progression tells them a lot about the structure of the defense and what kind of coverage they can expect to see. And so when there's 3 safeties, like even regardless of where they even are on the field, it just kind of like confuses quarterbacks of like, is that guy like a safety playing cornerback, or like what exactly is he like supposed to be doing in the structure? It just
is he blitzing? Is he coming up to stuff the run?
At the end of the day, Campanile has been like an agent of chaos in the best way possible for the Jaguars.
Love it. I am curious. In that Sumer Sports breakdown, did they include yesterday against the Jets? There were a couple, at least 1 or 2 plays in which there were 3 corners, 3 safeties, and Foye Oluokun on the field. Devin Lloyd was taken off the field. Was that accounted for at all?
It was a pretty specific query search. So I don't know off the top of my head, but that's definitely a good question. It's not just as 3 safety sets, to your point. Like they've got a bunch of different kind of personnel packages that they can roll out in different situations. And so you always love to see, whether it's an offensive side of the ball or defensive side, a unit being kind of like unpredictable and adaptable and shape-shifting. And so definitely encouraging to see.
And that is something that, in speaking with a lot of those defensive players in the locker room, they were encouraged coming out of the bye week. They were again encouraged even after the loss to the Texans, because Campanelli continued to say to them, if you are one of my best 11 players, if that means 4 of you are defensive backs, don't be deterred. I will find a way to get all 4 of you on the field at some point in time, if not all at the same time. And that's what we are seeing of late from the Jaguars defense and defensive coordinator. Let's flip it on over to the offensive side once more. Oh boy. So Brent Martineau, Austin Lane, you get them 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. here on the Action Sports Jax 24/7 network, Gus. And they have coined the phrase the Civil War when it comes to those who do not like Trevor Lawrence, those who defend Trevor Lawrence, with you and I falling into the latter category. Again, vindication, in case you missed it, vindicated with his performance the last 3 weeks, let alone the last month plus. Now there is a new civil war that has emerged in Duval, and it is over the left tackle position. Walker Little missed a second straight game after he self-reported symptoms, went back into the concussion protocol late in the week last week after clearing the protocol on Thursday. As I said on Sunday's postgame show, Gus, I've reiterated it at the Mo Bryan NFL Notebook in our Discord channel. Want Walker to feel healthy. Like, that is priority number one. We just heard some news on the WNBA today. Satu Sabali is still suffering from concussion-like symptoms from the WNBA finals in October. Like, concussions, I know we sometimes laugh them off, but this is a very serious situation. And so first and foremost, we want Walker to get healthy. And I think the Jaguars front office recognizes that they have the luxury of having Cole Van Lanen, and so they can rest Walker Little, much like they rested Dewey Wingard, much like they rested Eric Murray an extra week because they had Rayon Lane. This is not a soft benching from everything I have been told. This is a luxury and a recognition that they will need Walker Little for the stretch run, independent of what I am sure many of the analysts on the YouTube chat right now are probably telling us, Gus. You tell me, in your estimation, what should the Jaguars be doing along the offensive front in terms of their lineup?
Yeah, definitely good to start out with Walker Little's health. It's like concussions are unlike any other injury, where Little did get in full practices last week on Thursday and Friday. And with pretty much any other injury, if you see a player practice in full 2 days in a row late in the week, then you can probably be like, okay, like, I think they'll probably end up playing. But concussions, like, you just never know. I think CJ Stroud was held out for 3.5 games with a concussion earlier this season. So definitely hoping for the best for Walker Little and his health. But if and when he does return to full health this season, I'm not sure how the Jaguars can go back to him as their starter.
No!
It goes back to what I was saying.
Civil War!
It goes back to what I said about, like, the coaching staff and, like, the front office too, I guess, like, not playing like De'Ami Brown anymore after he wasn't super effective. Like, I feel like the biggest reason to continue playing Walker Little would be because he just signed a big extension, because, like, it would be silly to have a player making that much money just be sitting on the bench. But like, I don't think the new regime is going to be thinking like that. Like, Cole Van Lanen has been like everything you want in not just in like a backup offensive lineman, but just a utility offensive lineman, a swing offensive lineman that can play 4, arguably 5 different positions. I believe he's the only player this season that's played 4 different spots on the offensive line for a considerable amount of time, like 100 plus snaps. And he's also everything you want in a lineman, in that, like, you never really hear about him during the games. Like, it's the same for offensive linemen and cornerbacks, like, where if we're not talking about him during the game, it's probably a good thing that we're not noticing them, because the things that we notice for those positions tend to be mistakes as opposed to big plays. And so Van Lanen, like, doesn't make a huge amount of big plays. He doesn't have like flashy blocks or like big pancakes, or is like doing the Michael Orr, like running someone through the stands after the whistle. But he's just very technically sound. You can tell that he's a smart player because of his angles, especially when people talk about well-designed run games. They talk about how good like Kyle Shanahan and Mike McDaniel are at kind of like using motions and using formation packages to create advantageous angles for their blockers. And so Van Lanen kind of like does that by himself. Certainly Cohen and his staff are one of the best run game designers in the NFL, I would say. But Van Lanen does an amazing job of kind of like understanding angles, understanding where both his teammates and his opponents are going to be, where like the run, which direction runs are supposed to go in. And so he's able to like get the perfect angle and then just like wall off defenders. In the drop back game as a pass blocker, I think that his biggest weakness is lateral movement ability. I think if he went up against like a really good speed pass rusher, like a Yannick Ngakoue in his prime, then he would have problems. Or also, if I was a defensive coordinator and I didn't have a speed rusher, I would be sending blitzes and stunts and loops at Van Lanen, because he does have the awareness and the intelligence to pick up like loops and different bodies coming his way. But I'm just not sold that he has, like, again, the lateral ability to move side to side in quick enough fashion to be able to account for multiple defenders coming at him. And so I think that he is gettable. It'll be very interesting to see if he starts this week and Sunday for sure, because the Broncos are not just one of the best pass rushes, but also one of the most aggressive pass rushes. And so as big of a litmus test as it'll be for the entire team, it's arguably the person who will be tested most will be Van Lanen, assuming he does start for the Jaguars. But again, like, I don't know what the argument would be for Walker Little returning to the starter other than his contract. I think that Walker Little is probably, like, you can make the case that he's a little bit of a better run blocker, because as good as Van Lanen is at kind of like getting those angles down and understanding like the concepts and the design of the play, like once he does kind of like get in that phone booth with defenders, once the play is kind of like running past him, he can kind of lose grasp quickly. I will say in the passing game, like anytime that a defender like kind of makes contact with him, the rep is basically over. He's really good at like having late hands, not using his hands to pass protect until the last moment so that it doesn't create an advantage for pass rushers. But he can kind of like easily get moved off of blocks, at least more easily in the run game. And so if you said Walker Little would provide a boost to the running game, then I would hear that. But Van Lanen's playing so well that like it would be just surprising to me to see him benched.
So Little has played 2.5 times as many snaps as Cole Van Lanen. So I say that to then say Walker Little has given up 9 sacks this year, 5 quarterback hits, 23 hurries, and 39 pressures, compared to 1 sack, 1 hit, 9 hurries, 11 pressures for Van Lanen, according to PFF. Now, why I say that, Gus, is number one, Robert Hainsey has awful measurements, according to PFF, awful grades. And you could make the argument he has been arguably the most valuable lineman, maybe not named Ezra Cleveland, but certainly since Ezra Cleveland's ankle injury along this front. So
sure.
That's where I wouldn't read so much into those PFF stats. You also mentioned that DB stats, offensive line stats, kind of comparable from the perspective of, yes, and this was said to me by a defensive back, and I think it bears fruit. You could give up 3 catches for 27 yards and a touchdown, and all any fan is going to talk about is the touchdown that you gave up. But that's a pretty good day at the office if you were also targeted 10 different times and you have 3 pass breakups to go along with those 3 completions that you allowed, one of them for a score. And the same thing can be said for offensive line, because everyone wants to talk about the sack that Walker Little gave up to Trey Hendrickson week 2 against the Cincinnati Bengals, because it was at an inopportune moment when the Jaguars were driving to put the game on ice. But at the same time, no one's talking about the previous 20 some odd pass blocking reps in which he stonewalled Trey Hendrickson, and Trey Hendrickson did not get to Trevor Lawrence. And so I think that is really important to, at the very least, acknowledge, not just to defend Walker Little, but in the grand scheme of offensive line as a whole as we try to analyze it.
That's fair. That's totally fair. And I think like the biggest knock like against Van Lanen is like out of his control. Like it probably would be sample size. And that's kind of like I'm thinking ahead to like, because Cole Van Lanen is a free agent. It'll be very interesting to see like the kind of money that he attracts on the open market, assuming he goes there. But like for the Jaguars, like regardless of whether Walker Little ends up like replacing him again as a starter, it'll be interesting to see just like how much the Jaguars offer Van Lanen, because he's just obviously provided such a valuable role for them this season. But again, it's been on a small sample size. Like you don't want to like give a guy $20 million for 4 years because he did really well over an 8 games stretch. That's usually like just not a very good recipe or a very good process for team building. But like at the same time, like he's just one of many players who have like kind of broken out under this coaching staff and like are seemingly like finally having his talents maximized. And so like you don't want to just like let him walk either. And so it'll be a tough decision for the Jaguars, both in terms of the short term of like whether to start him or Walker Little, and in terms of the long term of like how much to prioritize keeping him in the building after the season, and like how much do they trust his small sample size is like a big part of that equation.
I've got it on a couple different authorities that it's going to be a goal of the Jaguars to keep Cole Van Lanen in the building heading into 2026. It'll be curious if they are able to do so. Let's take one more quick break, and when we come back, Gus will give his final thoughts on the Jaguars and Broncos coming up this Sunday at Mile High.
You don't see a pit, it ain't legit. When you hear that, you think Bono's Pit Barbecue, a staple in Northeast Florida now for 75 years. A place that feels like home with friendly service, a meeting place for friends, family, or business occasions. On the menu, the corn nuggets are a favorite in our house, but there's something for everyone. Sandwiches, platters, salads, sides, desserts, and family feasts. You see Bono's all over the place in Northeast Florida. You know, there are almost 20 locations in the Jacksonville area now, so stop on by, sit down, and dine in with Bono's. You can also take it to go. There are drive-thrus in many of the locations, and they have delivery options too. Just download the Bono's app to make things easy. I signed up for the loyalty program, and you can too, to get special offers. If Jacksonville is home, few things feel more Jacksonville than Bono's Pit Barbecue. Celebrate 75 years and many more to come. Bono's Pit Barbecue. If you don't see a pit, it ain't legit.
Choose your own adventure. It's not just a saying, but a way of life here at Cycles of Jacksonville. And whether it's 2 wheels or 4 wheels, at Cycles of Jacksonville, a great adventure awaits. With brands like Honda, Vespa, Segway, and Triumph, Cycles of Jacksonville has you covered with their inventory featuring a 60,000 square foot building. If 4 wheels is more your thing, check out the largest selection of Honda Talons in the entire county. No matter what you're looking for, Cycles of Jacksonville is going to have the selection you need, all with great financing and rebates. Plus, if you're active duty military, Cycles of Jacksonville will offer you 0% financing along with great discounts for military and first responders. And when you want to get off the road and set sail, Cycles of Jacksonville has you covered with everything you need to get on the water. So if you're ready for a great adventure, let Cycles of Jacksonville be your guide. Located off Atlantic Boulevard, or check out their website at cyclesofjacksonville.com.
Nobody but Nimnicht. Our family has purchased 6 vehicles from Nimnicht Buick GMC. The #1 Buick GMC dealer in Jacksonville has lots of inventory to choose from with their best price guarantee. Who gives you top dollar for your trade? Nobody but Nimnicht. Save up to $10,000 off select new GMC Sierras or get rates as low as 1.9%. You know, I'm a truck guy. GMC Sierra, my trim level is an SLT. This one's an Elevation. Pretty good looking color as well. So here at Nimnicht Buick GMC, you have a lot to pick from. My father-in-law, he drives this, an Enclave, so I like that GMC in the family. 2025 is coming around the corner, which means it's almost time to close out those 2024s this summer. You can schedule a test drive at NimnichtBuickGMC.com, and while you're there, check your trade value and customize your payment options. Nimnicht is there for you, even on Sundays. So, who has put in the most years and stands behind a better experience? The answer's simple. Nobody but Nimnicht.
One segment to go here on today's edition of Club 904, hanging out with Gus Logue, the founder of Duval22.com. You also get him over at Big Cat Country. And Gus, our time is short because we've had so much fun exhausting multiple Jaguars topics, but it is time. Let us look ahead to the Jaguars Week 16 showdown that could go a long way in playoffs. Yes, playoffs. Postseason seeding when they face the Denver Broncos this Sunday. Couple stats right off the top. These are 2 operations that have hovered around the top 15, both offense and defense, grading wise at PFF, as well as in next gen stats and just overall measurements throughout the course of the season. But the one for me that I think is probably the best place to start, is in stopping the run. The Jaguars are #1 in stopping the run this year. The Broncos are #2. And then there is that formidable pass rush that Vance Joseph has orchestrated as well.
Yeah, like mine's Mia, I was in the exact same boat with you on both sides of the ball. Definitely a monumental matchup for the Jaguars because according to the Athletics playoff simulator, the Jaguars have an 11% chance of winning the playoffs if
the #1 seed.
Yeah, they have an 11% chance of clinching the #1 seed as of right now with a win over Denver, which currently has the #1 seed in the AFC. The percentage would jump from 11% to 25%. And so 25%, not a ton, but definitely more than 11%. The Jaguars are still racing for the hope of that. But it's a very good litmus test again for the entire team. And like, not just because it's very like a playoff opponent, team that, again, right now is projected to be the top seed in the AFC, but because of the matchups on both sides of the ball. For the Jaguars defense versus Broncos offense, the question is, can you stop Bo Nix? Because as you said, like, the Broncos rushing attack has not really been great recently, especially when J.K. Dobbins went out in week 10 due to an injury. They just have not been able to find the same pace and rhythm in the running game. RJ Harvey is a very electric, explosive, fun to watch rookie running back, but he's better on kind of perimeter runs where he can get out in space and use his athleticism. In terms of inside the gut, the Broncos have just not been great over the past month plus on runs. And obviously the Jaguars, as Mia said earlier, have been the league's best rushing defense this season, especially since their week 8 bye. And so I think Denver is going to have to throw in this game in order to put up points against the Jaguars. Bo Nix did really well last week against the Packers, which is obviously a similar defense to what Anthony Campanile runs because he was there under Todd Halfley for the past couple of seasons. But Bo Nix had kind of surprising success, I would say, because both this season and in his career, he's been much better against man coverage than zone coverage. And both the Packers and the Jaguars run a lot of zone coverage. And so it sets up well for the Jaguars on paper. You'll probably be able to shut down the Broncos run game and make Bo Nix beat you. And he's not very good against your most preferred coverage type, which is zone. And so we'll see like how much damage Nix in that passing offense can do. It is probably like the best stable of receivers the Jaguars have played in a couple of games. And so it'll be interesting to see if the secondary that we were gassing up earlier in the show is able to hold up. And then on the other side of the ball, like the two teams that the Jaguars have had the most problems against this year were the Seahawks in week 6 and against the Rams in week 7. And those teams have arguably the two best pass rushes in the league. They're not like the Houstons where they have like two mammoths in the front of their depth chart, or even
two
like the
cyborgs.
Jaguars.
Yeah, it's just two cyborgs on the
cyborgs.
end.
Yeah, like Josh Hines Allen and Trayvon Walker. It's like the Rams and the Seahawks are both very deep units with very well orchestrated blitzing attacks. And so this will be a great test against the Broncos because they have perhaps, at least on paper, the best pass rush in the NFL. Nick Bonito is a candidate to win Defensive Player of the Year, but again, it's a very deep unit. It's a unit that's very creative in their pass rushes, thanks to defense coordinator Vance Joseph. And so, like, can the Jaguars get past this defensive line and put up points against this defense will be huge and like really tell us a lot about how far they'll be able to advance in the 2025 playoffs.
One other stat for me, Gus. Bo Nix doesn't give the ball up. They don't put the ball on the ground all that often. They are 14th, or excuse me, they have only given it away 14 times. That is top 10 in the National Football League, the Denver Broncos offense. But they also don't turn over offenses on defense all that often. They have just 12 takeaways on the year. That is 27th in the National Football League. Of course, the Jaguars have hovered near the top of that mark on the defensive side of the ball throughout the course of the season. And so I think it's going to be interesting one way or another. Trevor Lawrence, again, has not thrown an interception over the last 3 weeks. If he is able to take care of the ball, and if that Jaguars heralded takeaway defense, interception happy defense that had 3 picks of Brady Cook this past weekend is able to force Bo Nix, if nothing else, into bad decisions, hey, that might be advantage Jaguars.
Absolutely. I'll be interested to see also like just how much the Jaguars' pass rush is able to create pressure on Bo Nix, because Sean Payton, one of the things he does best is create pass protection plans for his offensive line for Bo Nix. And the Jaguars have been much better since their bye week in terms of generating pass rush. Josh Hines Allen has been on a tear. He leads the NFL in pressures since the bye week, but it's definitely been a collective effort. And so it's kind of like an unstoppable force meeting an immovable object. Like something has to give this weekend.
Folks, make sure you go subscribe to Gus's Duval22.com. Anything else you want to plug, Gus, before we get on out of here?
No, just the site in general. I think this show is probably a good explanation of kind of what you can expect over at Duval22.com and on Duval22 socials, Duval22 YouTube, et cetera, et cetera. Check out the work. It's just a lot of analysis using analytics and film to give you a better understanding of the Jaguars. And so it'll be a lot of fun to continue doing that as they push into and hopefully through the playoffs.
And always a lot of fun to have you hop into Club 904. We appreciate it, brother man. We will do it again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, man.
the one and only Gus Logue. We appreciate him hanging out with us. We appreciate you hanging out with us. Again, we won't see you till Sunday's post-game show following the Jaguars. Hopefully, 6th victory in a row over the Denver Broncos. Listen, folks, Denver 8-2 in one-possession games this year. As we've seen with the Kansas City Chiefs, at some point in time, regression comes for us all. Until Sunday, we will catch you later.